Hi everyone, this section is about leading strategically. So this was the first section of the day, and you may remember the Lego game where we got you into 3 different groups and you had to build a structure. So the point of that exercise was that in order to get successful outcomes, we need to provide people with essentially 3 things. First of all, the vision. So what it is that you're actually trying to build. So that was, I think 2 groups, can't remember now, had the actual picture of what they needed to build essentially. The second part is the instructions. So how do I build this vision? What is it that I need to do? I think only 1 group had that. And then the last thing is actually having the bits of Lego to be able to build the vision. So you need to have essentially all 3. And quite often what a lot of organisations have or focus on is just the Lego bits, not necessarily the instructions, and also what it is that we're trying to build. So as leaders, it's remembering that we need to constantly have those 3 things at play. You can't be focusing too much on one and then forgetting the others. For example, if you focus too much on just the Lego pieces, then could we potentially lose sight of what it is we're trying to achieve here? What is the big picture that we're working towards? So that was the first thing we did. Then we talked about the famous or infamous, I don't know what you want to call it, Kodak story, where they went with a strategy that failed ultimately, and as a consequence they went under and 125,000 people apparently lost their jobs, and obviously their families were being impacted by that as well. So that's an example of a strategy going seriously wrong. Bit of a bummer for them to be remembered in that way because they did do a lot of cool stuff, but you can see if you don't really think critically about things and make the wrong decision, it can end quite badly. Then we talked about, okay, so why is strategy important? So what's the go with this whole concept? Well, it provides directions. It gives you a base from which to make decisions from. It gives a roadmap to people of where it is that we're wanting to go. And it's talking and thinking about the future opposed to always just focusing on the now. Then we looked at, I guess, so what the Earth is strategy. It is basically about shaping our future, and we need to be constantly thinking about that. And there's kind of 2 strategic options you can take with strategy, which is exploit or explore, or persevere or pivot, whatever terms you like to use. So, is it that we continue with what we're doing, the status quo, and we make that better? Or is it that we do something completely different? Try that out. And it's just being balanced in that approach as well, because if we go with one over the other to an extreme, we may be opening ourselves up to risks, if that makes sense. And lastly, we talked about the Ørsted, the Danish power company, who they made a strategic decision, which was a massive one, to go from fossil fuels to renewable energy. Sounded like a bit of a painful process, but they got there in the end. And I think that's an example of where they decided to explore versus exploit. So, when we are implementing change, I think it's fair to say it's never going to be easy, but it shouldn't be a reason why we don't do it, if that makes sense. All right, so in terms of you all, my questions to you are, how often do you actually sit down and factor in strategic thinking time? How often do you meet as a team on strategy? How often is that filtered down and talked about with your team? So these are some of the things that I would like to invite you to think about a bit more, because they are important, especially if you're going to be leading an organisation one day. All right, I'll leave you with that for now.